afternoon, good morning. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
How's everyone today?
Fabulous.
Well, it's great to be here. I appreciate having this opportunity, guys, to share a little of making a records manager's life easier through automation. There we go. Pretty simple today, just keep it short and sweet. I've done several content management systems, throughout my history, and records management's always a challenge. There are some big challenges that we'll go through that most record managers go through. What I've done is I've divided the description into here's the challenge, here's a way to automate that challenge, and some of the options you have. And I'll get right into one of the first ones, which is the due diligence, or the the FOIA, which really requires a lot of research and the huge amounts of records that are requested. So how do you gather all that information? So typically the challenge is it may not be in a central repository. In fact, most of it is spread out through everything from people's hard drives to email inboxes to filing cabinets. There's probably stuff in repositories. There's shared hard drives. All of those things contribute to siloed information, and then it takes a crew of people to go out and find it, bring it all back in, and you don't know if you're capturing everything. Things that are electronic, images, documents that were maybe TIFFs, not PDFs, or PDFs that were never searchable. So I may go find the information, but now I have to read through it because I can't tell if the data I have in there, maybe the name of the document is appropriate for what I'm doing, but I have to actually open it up and look at the content. So again, electronic documents that aren't searchable. Uncontrolled content. That's kind of what you usually find. People have either stashed maybe paper copies somewhere, or they have it on their hard drives, or talk about emails. Stuff that isn't necessarily considered a record that maybe should be. Those are all contribute to this. Okay, I need to go gather this information. How can I do it as quickly and efficiently as possible? So there's a couple ways to look at this. Process automation, or the latest term is robotic process information. It kind of makes it a little sexier, a little more fun to think about. There's several ways to do this. We typically will take a set of robots to go tackle siloed data. So we create discovery robots that go out and as long as I can get to a location electronically, I'm going to log in, I'm going to just browse through the entire structure, whether it's somebody's hard drive, a shared hard drive, a content management system. I'm going to go and I'm going to glean information. I'm going to collect all that and put it into a structure that I can report on. And I'm going to collect things like document name, the type of document it is, where it's stored. All that information can be gathered up, and now I have something that can feed my other processes or my other robots. Part of that might be, okay, I've just collected all this discovery information. Now I'm going to build some rules into this, and I'm going to say every document that's a PDF that's searchable that has maybe something in the title, let's grab it and put it into either a location that we can have people review and say, yeah, this is a good document, make it a record, or it's part of that discovery or due diligence process where it says, hey, this is a potential record that I'm looking for. So capture robots can be fed through the data we've collected, or let's say you have paper documents and you have those all over the place. You open up the file and you start scanning it. Well, the robot can watch a location where you put these scanned documents, and it can start capturing and importing that information as well. So what we found is the integration or orchestration between this is very powerful. Along with the capture of this information, oftentimes you have images. You can actually have the robot say, oh, this is an image, there's no text or OCR associated with it. Send it off to an engine to create a layer, an OCR layer. Now marry them together, and now I have a searchable document. So you not only can start aggregating all those siloed data into one structure or one data source, you can push it out to whatever systems you want to. Maybe the system is just, hey, here's a folder to meet this due diligence request or a FOIA request, or it could be, hey, we're going to start cleaning our information up. We need to clean up our stuff. Let's start with a small group, and we'll grab all that information. Have the robots do it 24/7. They can collect data all the time. And we can have a set of humans that go, okay, this is valid data. Let's move these. Here's the stuff that we don't need. Maybe it's duplicates, whatever. So it's a nice way to do that. And that's where we get the orchestrate and schedule, where we have we set up times where these processes run unattended 24/7. So if you have large amounts of data that need to be cleansed or looked at, perfect opportunity for automation. And as I'm going, if you guys have questions, just raise your hand or holler around. So collecting, satisfying these large requests for information. Good example of, and that's just the high level of what you can do here. There's all sorts of process automation that you can apply to that type of a request. Migrations. We've come from, typically in most entities, you have legacy systems all over the place. They can be something homegrown, they can be out in the cloud. You could be decommissioning something. And what we found is it takes a lot of people and a lot of effort to decommission a system that you've been using for years. The challenge is how do you do that in a short amount of time as possible, keeping the cost down, and actually turn off the system. We found in many places we come into to do that, most of the decommissioned systems are still being used, even if they're not paying for maintenance or whatever, because they just haven't done the migration completely. Again, what we do is we set up process automations, or RPA, robot process automations. And the beauty about this is that as long as I can access a system electronically, log into it, green screens, web, cloud, homegrown, I can write an API or a synthetic API. I'm just actually telling the robot to log in with credentials, run a query, go get information. Hey, grab this index or attribute data, grab these 3 documents, put it in a package, go to my new system, log in, enter the data, and put it in the right location based on your rules that you say, here's how the robot should do it. So when you have a challenge like decommissioning a legacy system or actually just communicating with your legacy systems, These process automations allow you to define the rules that allow you to talk to these different systems, and you can track and you can get a history of exactly what happened when you grab information from point A and move it to point B. So there's traceability. Audit trails are very thorough and complete, and it allows you that opportunity to say, hey, we decommissioned this system on this date. Here's everything we did to move the data into the appropriate system, and now you have traceability. So you get audited, you got a complete log of everything you moved. A big win for doing this type of work. I think I've talked about, so your accuracy goes up to 100% because there's no transposition of key strokes. There's, you're naming things the way you want them to be named based on your business rules. The only thing that might get moved from point A to point B is the data was incorrect to begin with, and it'll show up the same way in the new system. Some of the options that we throw in there is that when I grab a piece of data that I can do a lookup on to make sure it's valid, you can add that into the process as well. Again, these processes work 24/7. You can spin up as many as you need. So if your migration, you need to get it done in 3 months, you can design a robot or robots that you can have many of them running all the time. So now, when that's all done, I haven't had to hire people, and the robots don't whine when you turn them off. So it's a really powerful tool. Okay, I think that's about it. Anyway, again, this migration approach, where this legacy system is talking to each other, it applies to anything. So if I have 8 or 9 legacy systems and I don't use them very often, I can now use them all the time. I don't have to, perhaps you don't need to go to a new system. Here's some things that are benefits. We have all the information we need, we just haven't collected it, and it's not centrally accessible, right? I don't have one place where I have to go to 5 different systems. Well, this migration or these kinds of robots can actually aggregate all that data into a central, I'd call it an index or category or some place where I always go here, and my robots have constantly feed and keep my index updated. So it's one place to go, and when you click on that link or you do that, it has already gathered the information from all these legacy systems. So you can report on it. Another benefit of that is you start feeding some of these tools you've purchased, the business intelligence tools that often take a lot of people to fuel and get the data in there and then produce reports. Now you've created this aggregate information that your BI tool can use.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you spoke of the robots running sort of like all at the same time, or 24/7. So my question is part of 2 parts. Can those robots run simultaneously on the same set of data?
Yes.
Or can you set them up to run in sequence?
You can do both. Yes, they're very, the only, if they're both looking at the same document, whoever gets it first is going, and the other one will have to wait until that document's available or whatever that process is doing. But you can have them run all at the same time or sequentially.
On the same set of data?
On the same set of data. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
And that's really powerful. So we'll have, and I don't think I have a slide about cleaning data. That's a really, that's very effective there, where I can have one robot starting to do these searches, grabbing information. The other robot is looking up some of the same information and validating, hey, this is good data. It's got a green checkbox. This is bad data. Let's identify it. indicate which record it is or what that thing is, notify people when my process is done. You can have a list of all the things it found that say, hey, this didn't meet your criteria. Here's where it's located, and you can send it in email, then go back and go, okay, let's clean up the data. So, good question. Okay, kind of I would say 12 years ago, maybe even 14, was working for Corporate Express, and their biggest challenge at that point in time was email. It's just everybody collects and does their own thing with their email. There's been a lot of changes with email into getting them into a central location. So, not everybody has siloed. It's in a cloud, but it's wide open. One of the biggest challenges is, hey, I'm working for you. I decide to leave the organization, and I have 10,000 emails in my inbox or whatever structures I've built in there. And I don't file them away because my email box is a nice little repository for me, right? I can go find what I need when I need it, and I save copies of everything. And I want to, make sure I have a paper or electronic trail of my conversations, all those things. So, oftentimes I've worked with records managers who say, yeah, this person left, and now I need to figure out what am I going to save? Are any of these records? Is there important information that's been stashed in this structure or structures? So again, here's where process automation is very powerful, because you can take somebody's email account and you can set up process automation that would just basically go first pass and go through just the header information, subject, who it was to, who it's from, any CCs, line copies, the subject, even the body of the email. You can do some, intelligent recognition of information. So now I can do the first pass and say, okay, out of that, 2/3 of this is, nothing we need to be concerned with. There's certain words that aren't in this, or there's subjects, hey, this was a birthday celebration, or, who knows what they put in there. All of the media and junk mail that you get. And then you can have the robot. So that's typically what happens is we build a number of processes or robots that interact with each other. So I'll have one that'll create that set of data that says, all right, of this entire 10K emails, there's about 5K we need to be interested in. Let's look through those. Let's see if they have attachments. We'll look at the attachment. We'll determine what type of attachment it is. Maybe we can glean something from the name. If it's OCR, we can go in and look at the data inside it. If it's not OCR, we can send it to an engine. It'll OCR it, bring it back, and say, oh, yeah, this is another document we're interested in. So you can interrogate the attachments. You can do something with the attachments. Again, that's going to give you another result set. And the idea here is now this is where the human comes in and says, all right, we did the first pass. Here's what we've done. The second pass shows all the documents we think that are attachments that should be records. Now you can start reviewing those and getting, yes, no. And in fact, we've set them up so you can just react to the robot, and you just say, yeah, here of the set, I've approved these 95. You send it off, and the robot can then take that information, import it into a content management system. Again, like we talked about with some of these requests, it might even put them in a location, a file, or a folder that represents a case, or like legal holds or whatever. Let's put all that information over here. Now we can package it up and send it to somebody. Then what do you do with all that email? Well, Well, now you can have it auto archive the information. Here's everything I processed. Here's exactly what I did with each email I found. And it'll just go through and give you that audit trail, which is very powerful. Yes. Oh, you don't have a question, Larry?
Yes.
All right.
How you doing?
Yes. I'm well. So those are kind of the big hitters. I talked a little bit about cleaning of data. One of the other things that we'll do typically, the first pass is duplication of records check. I talked about a little bit of that at the beginning where you have all that siloed data. If it's electronic, email, whatever, you know, finding file names that are the same in all sorts of different directories. You know, the big question is which one is the record, right? You know, and so we've set it up in such a way that here's the most recent file name that's been duplicated 37 times, and it's, you know, based on a time and date stamp. That's probably going to be your latest version, but you don't know until somebody goes up, opens it, and starts looking at that data. So duplication of records, another really good use case for process automation. Okay, I think that kind of wraps up. I hit some big areas, and once you start seeing where process automation can help, you know, those are the big hitters, but there's so many other areas. It just goes across all industries and markets. There's really not one we found that says, oh, you can't use. I'm going to help you get rid of all of that repetitive, mundane checking of data. I'm going to do that for you so you can actually review and make some decisions about what the results show. Caroline?
I do have a question, and it almost ties back to your previous workshop several months ago,
Okay.
where you focused on the basic skill set somebody needed to program the robots, and then when the task was done, potentially reprogramming.
Right.
So we didn't really touch on, is this level of detail a requirement for IT involvement, or is it departmental, or maybe you can help us understand
Yeah,
that?
good question. So the tool sets that we use, we typically can, we know how to write robots. We know how to teach people how to write robots. So typically what we'll do is we'll come in an organization, we'll find the people who own the process, right? They have to have very little IT experience. They don't have to have programming experience. The tool sets these days are visual, so I can add a step that says, log into this system, put my credentials in. You know, it's a very visual-based tool. And I found that the best robot builders are those who haven't ever programmed, because they know the process, they know the exceptions, and they're not already zoned in to say, I would do it this way because that's the way I was taught how to program. It's more like, here's the process. Let's first of all start duplicating the process. And then all of a sudden, once you get the hang of how a robot does its work, you'll re-engineer your process, and you'll find you make it nice and lean. Or you create several processes that work together. So subject matter experts, excellent for robot process engineers, I call them, and department managers. IT's involvement is usually make sure the server's up and going so my robots can run. The tool sets now allow you to design and build all in your own environment. You don't have to, you can test a robot process end to end without ever having to touch production or any of that. So IT, once they understand what they're doing, is pretty happy about it because they don't have to do the programming. You don't have to go have requirement sessions. You know how those processes can take a long time. Now it's your world. You get to sit down on your workstation, build and test your robot, say, hey, this works really well, I'm ready to push it up to a place where other people can use it, or you use it yourself, or it runs independently.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Indeed, thank you so much.
Yes?
So what would the different cases be when you would use a crawler versus a robot? And how do you differentiate those two types of tools?
Well, a crawler, is essentially a robot. It's the same thing. That was the way it was the older term, they called it crawlers, right? Where it starts just going through every file system and reporting. What's great about the robot is you can, as you find information, you can do something with it immediately if you want to. Or you can just go, like I said, that one example, I can collect all that information, and then that's what fuels my next process or robot to say, okay, based on what you found, I've got a set of rules. My robot's going to look at every line and go, it matches the rule, put it over here. It doesn't match the rule, it's an exception, notify me, and I'll go look at those manually. Did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
I have one, Chairman.
Yes.
A couple of people have asked me, in terms of a content services software, what's the return on investment? How fast does that accelerate with the robot?
Wow, good question. I would say it depends on if you're implementing a new one. Now my migration path is much faster. I can set up a set of rules that move information into that content management system. If you have a legacy system and you want to go and cleanse it, again, that's a very, the cost of a robot compared to a crew of people, the return on investment is quick. It's months, not years. So, and that's the other nice thing about process automation is some of these robots take a week to build and test and get into use. Sometimes shorter, depending on what the chores those robots are. And again, it takes about 6 weeks to get comfortable with building a robot. So, really powerful tool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. All right, well, it was a pleasure talking with you today, and please contact us if you have any questions.